In this video, I'm going to do object-oriented programming in Roblox. And if you don't know what it is, that's fine. I'll explain it as we go. It's a way of organizing code, and it's really effective in reducing code and keeping it clean. So I have like some core functionality in this guy here. He can walk, he could talk, he could detect if NPCs are around. Then when I made these other two guys, I didn't need to write a lot of code because I extended the functionality into these two guys. Like this guy, he says stuff and runs back and forth. And I got a little shopkeeper here, right? So you can make more specialized classes as you go along. I thought that'd be pretty cool. Today, we're going to do all of the object-oriented stuff and then go through the tables and the module scripts you need. And then maybe we could do another video with real-life cases, like a capstone. But you'll get everything you need from object-oriented programming, about object-oriented programming in this video right here. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, in order to understand object-oriented programming in Lua, we're going to need to really understand tables because that's how we build our classes. And classes are the grouping of code that we'll make our objects with, right? It's the template for the objects. And I'll show you how this is done. Don't get wrapped around the axle on the terminology. So we have our server script service, hit the plus. Let's add a regular script. Eventually, we're going to move these to module scripts, but right now, a regular script. Call this first table, and let's define a table, right? So we'll say local dog equals open and close parentheses. All right, and now we could put some things in the table, right? We might want to do this. We might want to say dog dot name equals, how about Ralphie? Another way to put elements in the table is bracket notation. So we could do breed like this and say pit bull. That would work. Or we could use the bracket notation where you use the square bracket here, speech quote, square bracket. You should be aware of both of these methods of adding stuff to a table. Now let's go ahead and print the table out because I want to show you how to make sure you're not on log mode so you can see what's in the table. So we'll say dog equals, whoops, dog. Oh, I see it right here. Dog. There we go. Now let's go over here to play. I know we're going to go view. I'll say output. And we see this dog right here, this table with this hexadecimal number. I intentionally did that because I believe that's the default way of showing a table in the output window. But if you go over to these three dots and you turn off log mode, this check right here, it says log mode. Boom. Let's do it again. Play. Now you have the brackets and you could open up your table. We got breed and we got the name, Ralphie. All right, let's close this, go back to our first table, and now we can add a function. That's right, we could add functions to our table. Ooh, let me turn my game off. Forgot that. Go back to your first table and let's add a function. All right, so there's a couple ways of doing this. We could do the function like this and say dog dot bark, and then open close speech quote, print, woof. You should be aware of another way of defining a function. I always use this function and then function name, but you could do this. Let's say, how about sleep? Oh, you know what? I'm going to make these lowercase. I know the convention is uppercase. Actually, I'll just stick with the convention. I don't want to mess you guys up, but I usually do the lowercase for that from my Java days. So we'll do like sleep. That's going to be the function name. And then this is going to be kind of crazy. We're going to say function here, open and close parentheses. And then we can put our little function stuff, right? Like maybe snore or something. All right. And that's going to work. That's going to define the function. We could call it, right? We could say like sleep. Oh man, I'm really messing up my typing. Sleep, but it's not in the table. How do we get in the table? It's not too bad. We're just going to go like this. We're going to say dog.sleep. Now it's going to be in the table. This is red because we have to do like a dog.sleep. Dog.sleep. All right. And that's going to call it. And then we're going to be able to see the function in dog. We're going to be able to see bark, and we're going to be able to see sleep. Let's try it. Hit the play button, and then I'm going to go to my output window. We can see the snore, right? The sleep got called successfully. And then we'll open dog up. I can make this bigger. Let me make that bigger. All right. Now we can see we have the name function in there. So it doesn't give you all the code, but it does take you, it takes you to actually where we printed it. It does tell you that it is a function. So we have the bark function, sleep function, and then for these here, it actually gives you the values. That's pretty good. Let's turn this off. Let's go back to our first table. I'm going to close the output window so we have a little more room. Now there's one more thing I want to show you in regards to functions, and it's actually a method, right? So we'll say function dog : walk. All right, now we're not going to see a difference here, but in the next script, I'm going to show you the difference. We'll do print, how about step, step, step. All right, and then how do we call this? Well, the way we have it now, we could call it like dog dot walk, or we can call it dog : walk. I'm going to show you why sometimes you can't do that and sometimes you can. Let's go ahead and play this just to make sure. We'll go to our output window, right? I'm on view and then output. So we see the step, step, step. We got to call it twice. Step, 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 step. We look in here. It doesn't say method. It still says function, right? We always call it a function for the data type. It's data type function. In Lua, it's kind of crazy like that. We have a data type for function. All right, let's close this output window. Let's turn the game off. Now, in order to move into object-oriented programming, we need to learn about metatables, a meta method named index, and how to make a constructor in our tables to make them more class-like. Remember, classes group together like code, and then it's a template. We can make copies of the class and they become objects. So the class is a template for an object. Now, if my descriptions aren't complete enough for you, I am going to put a link in the description in the video for metatables and meta methods. I'm going to put this link right here. You could read up on it, right? There's a lot of information. It's not just about the index. We have arithmetic. We have toStrings. We have a lot of cool stuff. So I'll put that link in the description, but let's go over the basics in our video. Let's go to server script service, hit the plus, and then I'm going to add a regular script still, right? I'm not on my module script yet. Let's call this second table. All right. And like the last one, we're going to make a dog class or a dog table. It's not quite a class yet. It's going to get closer though. So local dog equals open and close curly brackets, just like before. And now I'm going to do dog dot underscore underscore index equals dog. Now, if this is all new information for you, yes, I have not described this yet, and I will. I'll attempt to. And if you don't get the explanation, learn the pattern and get used to it. And then I think the explanation will start falling into place. I will try to explain it though. So right now, what I need to do before I get to that dash dash index is I need to make a constructor for my dog, right? And I'm going to start calling the dog a class. Even though it's a table, it's getting more class-like. And I want to make a copy of the class, which I'm going to call an object, right? And that's typical in object-oriented programming. The things you make from a class is called an object, right? So let's go ahead and do a local, I'll call it OBJ, short for object. And we are going to do this set meta table. We're going to make an empty table. And then I am going to associate dog as the meta table. What's a meta table? A meta table is a table that assists the other table, right? It's an association. So when I did this dog index dog, dog's the table. This index says, hey, if dog's assigned to another table, use dog stuff if we can't find the method or the table or the data inside this new thing we created. So we are assigning inheritance. We're going to make this table, and then it's going to get all of the old functionality from dog. So if we don't have it in our new table, dog's going to be the backup information. Now you don't have to repeat code, right? You could just leave it out if it's going to be the same, and then it's going to pick it up. When we use our object, it's going to pick up the information from dog if it's not in our new table. That's a little confusing, so you might just have to get used to the pattern for a while before you start getting comfortable with it. What I'm going to do here now, in my object, I am going to assign the name attribute, right? So I'm going to put this name in my table, or I should say in object now, because we're getting more class-like, right? and then I'm going to return the object. Now in the convention is to use this as self, but I don't like calling this self, right? They'll say, you should call this self because self is a key word. We're going to go over that too, right? So let's just call it object for now. Like if you do self here, it's going to change color. See how it changed color? Yeah, I don't like doing that right here in the constructor. Let's just call it an object. Now also notice right here, we're not using local because I'm going to put this in a module script and we're going to be able to call this stuff from other scripts. Right now we're not doing it, but we're setting up for it, right? I'm also going to make another function, right? And this is going to be dog, colon, it's going to be a method. How about bark? Right? And I'm going to use the capital B on bark to stay with the convention. I usually make that lowercase because of the Java days, right? Now, this is going to be crazy. We're going to say print self. Remember I mentioned that self. Self is going to refer to the data that is an instance of our table, of our object. And then I'm going to put name here, ... says woof. So this self.name is actually getting this name right here, the object.name that was assigned when we made a new dog. Let's try it out. I'm actually going to go to my first table though and disable that because this was just for demonstration, but I don't want to delete it because we want it for reference, right? So I'll just uncheck that so that it's disabled. We're only using our second table now. Let's scroll up a little so our code's closer to the middle of the screen. Let's do a local. How about dog1? And then we're going to get our dog.new, the constructor, right? To make a new dog. We're going to put a name in. How about Fido? And then maybe make a dog2, right? Dog2 equals dog.new. And let's call this one, how about waffles? Waffles is cool. All right. And now let's make them bark, right? So we'll say dog1 colon bark, right? Dog2 colon bark. Now we don't have any way to know what the name is except for that self, right? So there's nothing being passed in here that we can see. Let's go ahead and play it, see what we got, see if we have any errors. Hit play, view, output, Fido says woof, Waffle says woof. Looks like it's working. I'm going to close that window. I'm going to come back here, turn this off, go back to the second table. So the secret to the self is the colon. Sounds kind of zen, but I need to show you one more thing because when we do multiple levels of inheritance, we're going to have to do this, right? This is going to be a quick check right here. Let's do it again. Let's do dog2. We're going to make them bark again, but we're going to use the dot. Now this will cause an error if I just do it like this. What won't cause an error is to take the dog2 instance, pass it in here, and because we have a colon up here, the self is going to be implied. And then that's what's going to get the first argument. If you guys do Python, you're going to see a lot of similarity here, right? But if you don't, you're just going to have to take my word for it. Well, you don't have to take my word for it, right? We could hit play. Let's do that. Let's go view, output, and now we should have 2 woofs from waffles. Then there it is, times 2. So we didn't get an error. It worked right? We got Fido says woof, woof, Waffle says woof, and then Waffle says woof. I should have had an easier word for me to pronounce. All right, let's go ahead and turn this off. Now let's go ahead and put our table into a module script, and that's really useful, right? Then we can really use the object-oriented properties of our dog table, right? So I'm going to go to replicated storage. I'm going to put it there, and then I'm going to hit the plus, and then let's get a module script. So if you don't see it under frequently used, you could do mod. There we go, module script. And then let's call this, how about dog module? All right, and we're going to do some copying and pasting, right? We did a lot of work over here in second table, right? And I'm going to get from the top and our 2 functions, right? Make sure that we get our bark and make sure we get our constructor and these 2 lines up here, right? We're going to copy it, right? These down here, we're going to do this in another script. That's not really part of our table. That's just using the table, All right, so let's go over to dog module. Remember this return right here. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a highlight that, Control V to paste over that first line. Now this is red because we need to return Control C, dog. Cool. Now let's get our second table, disable that right down here in server script service so we don't have any weird printouts and stuff. And now we're going to use dog script, right? The dog module. Now let's make two subclasses of dog, right? Let's go over here. We're going to do replicated storage, hit the plus, and I'm going to make like a guard dog, right? I'm also going to use a module script, right? Module script. We'll call this guard dog. How about guard dog module? And we need to inherit all the dog stuff into our guard dog. That's going to save us some time. Up at the top of the script, where's my cursor? There we go. Let's do a local dog equals, we are going to require our dog module script. And I could cheat a little bit here, right? Because we're both in replicated storage. So I could do script dot parent, guard dog, go up to replicated storage, then go down to dog module, right? Dog module. Or you could do the whole instance of replicated storage and get it from there. All right, so this will work. This will be fine. I'm waiting for the day that they change that require to import because they did that on Node.js, right? The Node.js went from require to import. Waiting for Lua to do it too. All right, now guard dog. We don't want to just call this module. Let's call this guard dog. And how about set meta table right from the start? So we have our set meta table. We're going to do an empty table and then assign dog as the meta table for the empty table, which will become guard dog. We could do this right now. Control C, Control V, and that's going to make sure our guard dog has all of our dog stuff. Then we have to do our guard dog dot underscore underscore index to make sure if guard dog is a meta table, then if the table that has guard dog as the meta table doesn't have a function or data, go to the guard dog. Now let's go ahead and make a constructor for our guard dog, right? So we'll say function, no local, function, guard dog dot new, and that's going to have a name. The guard dog, I'll do that local object. I don't like using self there because it's not the true self, right? But everybody does. So don't try and figure it out. Just know that people are using it, right? Just for a variable. Terrible. I think it's terrible, but everybody does it. All right. So then let's get our metadata, set metadata. And then we could do it this way too, right? We could take our object and then get the guard dog and assign it. And that's just going to go boom, boom. So you could do it on initialization like we did up here, or you could just assign it just like that, right? Cool. And now let's return our object. And what's the guard dog going to do? You do not have to go above the function. I'm just kind of used to it for Lua, but because we're not using local, it doesn't matter if you go above or below. If you use local, you have to go above when you define a function. But I'm going to do it anyway, right? So guard dog colon bite, right? Because guard dogs can bite. There wouldn't be much of a guard dog otherwise. Let's do the self name so we know who's biting. And then we'll say chomps at intruder. Right? And that's what the guard dog does. So the guard dog now has a new method. It has the bite, but it can also use the bark from the original dog. Now let's make another type of dog. How about replicated storage, hit the plus, and module script. I think I'm going to go with a puppy. So I'll say puppy dog module, right? It's a specialized type of a dog. And we can go ahead, make a puppy class, right? So we'll say, oh, we gotta require our dog first, right? So let's do that. Let's say local dog equals require script dot parent, and then we'll go dog module. And then maybe right here, we'll say puppy Do our set metadata, set metatable, dog, and now we'll get our puppy dot underscore index. So if puppy is a metatable for another table, then if that table doesn't have something in it, look in puppy. And then we're going to go back even one more, right? If it doesn't have that in it, look in dog. So we're chaining together our functionality. So you only have to redefine new functionality in your subclasses. That's inheritance. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put that there. Now, our constructor is going to be pretty much the same. Let's go ahead and do that. Function puppy dot new name. It's going to be the name of the puppy. We'll get our object. How will we do that? How about dog dot new and then name. Sweet. Now let's do a set metatable, and then we'll get our object, which is the dog. Then we'll say puppy is going to be the metatable. So anything that's not in our object, we're going to get it from puppy. We're going to add a function. We'll say local function, or not local, function. Yeah, capital, puppy, and then colon, play. Right? Because puppy, feasibly all dogs play, right? But puppies definitely play, right? So we'll say print, let's do our self so we can see it. Self dot name. We can see which dog is doing stuff. I know, put a little space there. How about yaps playfully? Exclamation. All right. So we have a guard dog that can bite and do dog stuff, and a puppy that can play and do dog stuff. Look what I forgot. We have to return our object right here. Ooh, that would have been a mistake. That would have been hard to find. That's why you have to do incremental testing, right? So don't forget to return this object. All right, now we've got to make a dog manager to make the puppy and the guard dog do stuff. Let's go to server script service. And remember, I have these disabled. I'm going to make this game copyable so you can get all this though. So you would just have to enable it if you want to use those. Hit the plus. I'm going to add a regular script, right? And this is going to be my dog manager, dog mgr. Now we need to get our dog stuff, and that's going to be in replicated storage, right? So let's do a variable for replicated storage called rs, game get service, replicated storage, and then we'll do our guard dog. That's going to we're going to require it, right? We're going to require it from replicated storage. It should be fine to just use the dot because we are in server script service and replicated storage is fast. How about guard dog module? Let's do the other one for puppy dog too. Puppy dog equals require rs puppy dog module. Create a new instance of the guard dog. Let's just call it dog. How about gdog for guard dog? And that would just be guard dog dot new. And then we'll give them a name. How about meatball? Wait. Now, meatball can bark from the dog class, right? And then meatball can also bite, right? So we do bite. I don't see bite, but I think bite should work. Let's try it out, right? So guard dog, find out, view, output. Oh, look at that. Meatball says woof, woof, and then meatball chomps at intruder. So it did work. The IntelliSense wasn't really good at catching it, right? We had to remember it. All right, let's try our puppy, right? So the puppy, how about, well, let's call pup dog, right? Pup dog, and then puppy dog, dot new. Starting to get fatigued. We'll call him pork chop. Right, that's our puppy dog. Puppy dog can do those things too, right? We have pup dog. Can also bark from the dog class. And then pup dog can also play from the puppy class. So if this works, we got some pretty good inheritance. Let's try it. And we'll go to view, output. Look at that. Pork chop says woof. Pork chop yaps playfully. That's pretty cool. Now we got a good way of creating some sophisticated NPCs, and we can organize our code a lot better. I think this is pretty cool. I will put a link in the description for this game so that you could download it and copy it. I'll make it copyable too. And then also for the documentation in Lua on metatables and meta methods. That should be helpful. All right, I will see you in the next video.